My name's Stuart McPherson. I'm an explorer and naturalist. I've climbed dozens of unexplored mountains and discovered many new species. And yet the journey I've always wanted to make is to the most remote parts of Britain. And I mean remote. Not the islands of Scotland or the mountains of Wales, but the UK overseas territories. 14 islands and archipelagos scattered all across the 7 seas. They have 7 times the land area of the UK. Some are uninhabited, but 350,000 people live on the others. People who have voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. I read about these far-flung places when I was a child, and this was my treasure map. Not to hoards of gold and silver, but something even more special. Untold riches of wildlife and unique cultures. I wanted to stand on the biggest penguin colonies on the planet. I wanted to dive on the world's richest coral reefs. And I can do all that without leaving Britain. No single person has ever explored all 14 overseas territories. And that is just too much of a challenge for any explorer to resist. So I'm going to follow my childhood treasure map right the way across the globe to discover the furthest reaches of Britain.
This journey will take me to 8 of the UK overseas territories, which were once important military or trading bases, and some remain as such today. I'll visit the remote islands of Ascension and St. Helena in the Atlantic, Gibraltar and Cyprus in the Mediterranean. But first, 5 territories scattered around the Caribbean Sea. My journey begins in the wake of perhaps the most famous explorer of all, Christopher Columbus. October 12th, 1492. 3 Spanish ships anchored off the coast of an unknown tropical island, waiting for dawn and a chance to explore. Columbus was about to set foot on a new world. This place was teeming with strange and colourful plants and animals, the likes of which he'd never seen. The Caribbean is a biological hotspot, one of the most diverse places on the planet. But the world that Columbus found would soon be changed forever. In 1493, he came back. One of the stops on his second voyage was here on Great Tobago, in the British Virgin Islands. This time, he brought 17 ships, full of livestock, crop seeds, and 1,500 people. His voyage was the first attempt by Europeans to colonize the Americas, a move that would create the people, the maps, and the places we know today, and forever change the landscape of the entire planet. Other Europeans followed Columbus, and these islands were quickly transformed. Today, this is how most of us think of the Caribbean. Azure waters, a tropical paradise. But many of the creatures that greeted Columbus have vanished, or are so rare they're only just hanging on in a few out-of-the-way places. On my journey around the Caribbean territories, I'm going to find those places and meet the people who are helping these animals fight for survival. Beginning with Columbus, the Caribbean's plants and animals had to face hundreds of alien species, and the invasion is far from over. I've arrived at the second of the Caribbean territories, the Cayman Islands. Another tropical paradise, or so it seems. Beautiful reefs are home to spectacular corals and fish. But one fish doesn't belong here. I'm diving with Bradley Johnson from the Cayman Islands Department of Environment, looking for the Caribbean's latest alien invader. And it doesn't take long to find one. A lionfish. It should be living on the coral reefs of the Pacific, but somehow, nobody knows exactly how, it was introduced into the Caribbean. A voracious predator, it devours the native fish, pushing some close to extinction. Lionfish were first seen here in 2008, but now, in places, they make up to 80% of the fish population, and none of the local top predators will touch it.
So why don't local species prey on the lionfish?
Well, first of all, it's because they're not native to our waters. Okay. So the largest species that normally prey on reef fish, like the snappers and the groupers, don't recognize the lionfish as something that they can eat. And the other aspect is that they have venomous spines. They have 18 spines altogether. Wow. 13 spines across the top, and then 5 additional spines across the bottom.
Wow. And how powerful is the venom?
It's not fatal, but it gives you a very nasty, very painful sting.
Really?
But there's one predator that might help. Us. Commercial fishermen have joined conservationists to hunt the reefs for lionfish. The spines are so venomous that the lionfish are collected in plastic buckets to protect the divers. Stripped of their venomous spines, they're perfectly edible. And local people are now encouraged to add these fish to traditional West Indian cuisine. So, how good is lionfish? There's only one way to find out.
West Indian lionfish chowder.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy.
Thanks. Well, the lionfish is, of course, the perfect eco-cuisine. The more lionfish we eat, the fewer there are out on the reefs. And of course, the more we eat, the fewer of other endangered species, such as grouper, that end up on the tables. So it really is the perfect eco-greener than green choice. So eat them to beat them.
Lionfish are very tasty. And the more people that agree with me, the faster we can eat the alien lionfish into extinction. It should work. In the past, it's been far too easy to eat native Caribbean animals to the edge of extinction. The queen conch, a Caribbean native prized for its flesh by local Indians long before Columbus arrived. The conch are large, slow-moving, and very tasty. A recipe for disaster. And they once existed in numbers that defy imagination. In some places, Indians constructed huge artificial islands, many meters high, entirely out of conch shells. Big enough to build whole villages on. Yet when the first Europeans arrived, there were still uncountable numbers of conch in the water. These islands are more recent and tell a story of impending disaster for the queen conch.
This entire island is made out of these spectacular queen conch shells. This is actually an endangered species, but they're plentiful enough in these waters to be harvested as long as it's done sustainably. You're meant to catch these adults with these big flat flanges, and that shows that it's an adult capable of reproduction. The problem is that many of the ones on these drifts are these babies that don't have that flange. That shows that they're juvenile. And when you start taking these out of the populations, then the whole system is heading for collapse.
There may be a solution to this problem on the next territory that I visit, the Turks and Caicos Islands. This pioneering project is breeding conch in captivity. In the wild, most young conch die, but here they survive. First, they're raised in tanks, and then in sea pens, growing big enough to have a better chance of surviving in the wild. Thousands are released, and the rest can be sold for meat to take the pressure off the wild populations while they recover. And these huge mollusks have become an unlikely tourist attraction.
Here, Gianna, come touch this.
These farms, along with marine protected areas, might be enough to save the conch, but some Caribbean animals are much closer to the brink. Back on the Cayman Islands, these forests were once home to an amazing animal, a Grand Cayman blue iguana. But why isn't it blue? First thing in the morning, it's too cold. It needs the Caribbean sun, and as it warms up, it gradually turns an unusual shade of blue. But it was hunted for food and killed by introduced predators. And by the start of the millennium, there were hardly any left. It seemed the blue iguana would follow many other unique Caribbean species into oblivion. But not if one man could help it. This is Archie, and he's helping Fred Burton and his team rescue his species. With almost no funding, Fred has set up an iguana breeding station, and it's an amazing story.
So 20 years ago, could not just show you a blue iguana like this. They were to all intents and purposes extinct.
Really?
We didn't know where they were, we didn't know where to find them. We caught it just in time, and we managed to get together 20 different individuals from the original wild population, some from cages, some from rescued from the wild. Yep. And we started breeding them here on a small scale, and then it really started to pick up. And now what we're doing is we're actually hatching 100 young blue iguanas every year, rearing them till they're 2 years old, and then putting them out into protected areas.
That's amazing.
Hello. I think he's eyeing up your blue shirt, Stu. It's almost an iguana colour.
Yes.
Yeah, so now we're up to about 700. And hopefully, in another few years, we'll hit our target, which is 1,000 in the wild. When we reach 1,000, we don't need a captive breeding program anymore, and Archie can join his offspring in the wild.
His future's very bright.
Yeah. And I really look forward to the day we can close this whole captive facility down.
That's great.
Let all these iguanas go.
Back out into the world.
Yeah.
The Caribbean is full of unique creatures, each evolved in isolation on its own island. And there are so many islands in the Caribbean. It's one of the most diverse places on the planet. But why are there so many islands? I'm on my way to Montserrat to find the answer. Montserrat lies in the Lesser Antilles, a chain of islands that mark the boundary where two of the Earth's great tectonic plates collide. As they do, they push up volcanoes, which create new islands. This is how Montserrat was born. And in 1995, its volcano erupted again. The volcano spewed out devastating pyroclastic flows, torrents of superheated gas and dust that race over the ground, too fast for anything to escape. "20 years later, some parts of the island that bore the worst of the pyroclastic flows are still scenes of desolation. Much of the southern side of the island is now a barren ash field. And the capital of Montserrat, Plymouth, was directly in the path of the falling ash, which buried the town up to the level of the roofs. The same kind of eruption from Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii and Herculaneum. And walking around Plymouth today feels like walking through a modern version of Pompeii. The force of the eruption is almost impossible to imagine. But I've met up with Mapai, who saw the eruptions firsthand. He's taking me back to where he used to live.
Sure, some people think it's just ash, pyroclastic flows. But look at these boulders. They pelt down from the volcano down this valley.
But these huge rocks
These
here.
huge rocks. Can you imagine that? Destroying everything in its path. The homes, the villages. And then came this widespread of fire, which we call the surge, which burnt all the vegetation.
Really?
Look at some of the charcoal that has been left behind. It's an indication that's how the trees got burnt and turned into charcoal. But the saddest part is that the villages that were here are buried under us.
Wow. How deep are they?
About 5 meters below all of these pyroclastic flows.
These are people's homes.
These are people's home. And right where we're standing is where I'm from.
Really? Wow.
But even a volcano can't quash the Caribbean character. There's always a bar somewhere close, and a friendly barman.
That's what friends
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Come on.
Most of the islands have been developed. To me, they look like the front covers of exclusive travel brochures. But the vibrancy of real life here, of nature, has mostly disappeared. I need to get off the beaten track to get a glimpse of what the Caribbean should look like. This is Dog Island, off the coast of Anguilla. It's one of the most important seabird colonies in the Caribbean. But like many islands, had a population of black rats, which fed on seabird eggs and chicks. After a campaign to get rid of them, in 2014, Dog Island was finally declared rat-free. I'd love to come back in a few years. It could be even more spectacular than it is now. Brown boobies fill the air, and magnificent frigate birds ride the tropical breezes. Magnificent frigates occur right across the Caribbean. On Dog Island, they have a safe home to breed. But elsewhere, they face a sinister threat. Such as here on Great Tobago, in the British Virgin Islands. They nest in low bushes, but the bushes are draped with the corpses of frigate birds. And this is why. Nylon fishing line. Birds fishing at sea get caught up in discarded lines, and when they land back on their nesting tree, the line gets tangled in the branches. The bird dies a slow death. And as the nylon lines never decompose, the nesting trees soon become deadly traps. I'm off to join a team of volunteers who try and free as many of these birds as they can. But it's not easy. Frigates have very sharp bills.
You want to watch their beak? With his wing pulled out? Is that one up here?
The line is tangled around so many branches. I can see why it's lethal to these poor birds.
Okay, it's the other foot. Oh, look, it's cut.
Now all we have to do is remove the noose of line around its leg.
Pull in
Come
the
back.
pull the wing.
Come back.
Pull the wing in. Pull it in. Pull it in.
Right. Put him up.
It's obviously stressful for the birds, but without her help, they wouldn't stand a chance.
Fella. You know, he's got a fighting chance.
The Caribbean territories are fairly easy to reach, but the next islands on my journey are much more remote. Ascension and St. Helena lie in the center of the Atlantic. Ascension is a military base with regular flights by the RAF from a base in the Oxfordshire countryside. But Ascension couldn't be more different from England's green and pleasant land. A barren volcano just a few degrees south of the equator, and about halfway between Africa and South America. The island has been described as hell with the fires put out. And my first steps here felt like walking across a landscape on Mars rather than a part of Britain. The Portuguese discovered Ascension in 1501, but it looked so unpromising they never colonized it. And you can't really blame them. This jagged lava shoreline, pounded by Atlantic surf, wasn't very inviting. But in 1815, the British garrisoned the island. This uninviting speck of land had one big advantage. Its strategic position, right in the middle of the Atlantic. It was used to house stores for naval and merchant vessels on long sea voyages. And some of those supplies are still here. But Ascension was more than just a supply depot. Despite appearing so barren, Ascension provided its own harvest. One which just crawled onto the beach where it was easy to catch. Green turtles. From the 15th century onwards, turtle meat fueled the growth of Europe's empires. And when it was discovered in the 16th century, Ascension had one of the biggest green turtle colonies in the world. One reason why Britain claimed the island. But there was a problem. Green turtles only climb onto the beaches for a few months each year. These walled enclosures provided the solution.
These vast ponds were built so that a stock of live turtles could be kept ready for any ship that called into port. Once the turtles had been caught on this beach, this winch would haul them up and they could be kept in here, ready to be sold.
The turtle population was almost annihilated.
The trade in turtle meat has long since ended, and the turtles are now strictly protected. Fortunately, enough of the turtles survived and the population is now recovering. And they still nest on this very beach where they were once killed in huge numbers.
They crawl out of the sea under the cover of darkness, when it's cooler and they won't overheat as they haul themselves onto the beach. They're looking for somewhere to dig a nest.
I can see it, yeah, right there. As you can see, she's quite a powerful digger. These flippers are very strong for swimming through the ocean, but also for moving sand. With each flipperful, she's moving a kilo or two of sand, and very quickly digging a very deep hole.
The population has now recovered and is the second largest green turtle breeding colony in the Atlantic. Over the season, on this one beach alone, around 10,000 nests will be dug and filled with eggs. Most finish their task and return to the safety of the ocean while it's still dark. But a few are still returning as the dawn breaks. Now the struggle to reach the sea becomes more urgent. It won't take long for the heat of the day to become lethal. And some get into real trouble. They wander into the jagged lava at the edge of the beach and are now stuck.
This girl here obviously was trying to get to the water, but just didn't count on finding these sharp stones and rocks here. If we left her, the sun as it comes up would just cook her in her shell. And the problem is that... Yep! That's a 300 kilo adult, so I can't lift her on my own.
Luckily, groups of squaddies from the local RAF base join conservationists in early morning turtle rescue squads. Instead of eating the turtles, people stationed here now help save them, though it's not easy.
Hold up. See, there's a load more down here, so they can have up to 11 each day, so it's a big task. We got one.
These turtles are so much heavier than they look.
Keep going.
And she's away! That's one exhausted turtle. Good luck to you.
Back in the early days of exploration, the other thing that passing ships needed was fresh water. The parched slopes of Ascension don't look very hopeful. But when the Royal Navy garrisoned the island, a regular supply of fresh water was vital. Yet, there's plenty of fresh water here, in the form of mist condensed from moisture-laden winds blowing over the high central peaks. All it took was for two free-thinking visitors to invent an unusual solution. Charles Darwin called in here as he travelled the world in HMS Beagle. Then later his good friend, botanist Joseph Hooker, also came to the island. They thought that plants could wring water out from those clouds, and they persuaded the British government to send all manner of plants to this barren volcano.
Well, by the 1850s, the plants started to arrive. They came from Kew, all across Europe, South Africa, and as far afield as Argentina. and they were planted on this mountain behind me.
Although they don't normally grow together, the plants quickly formed natural-looking layers up the mountain.
The first layer on these dry lower slopes is made of these eucalyptus trees from Australia and these succulents and cacti from South America. It's hot and semi-arid. Halfway up, it's much wetter and home to these tropical rainforest trees and bananas from Asia. The upper slopes and the summit of the mountain are much cooler, and they're home to this mossy montane cloud forest. And it's really interesting that you get these three layers. These layers occur on tropical mountains across the world. And the fact that they've developed and stratified like that in such a short time is just nothing short of amazing.
Even more amazing, this man-made forest did exactly what Darwin and Hooker hoped it would.
Different plant species were selected to trap more and more humidity from the air. This is one of the original ficus trees that Joseph Hooker sent down from Kew over a century and a half ago. And he selected this tree specifically because these highly divided branches and these long aerial roots are all covered in moss, and that dramatically increases the surface area by which the moisture can be trapped. And the results couldn't be more efficient. There's been no rain up on this mountaintop today, but as you can see, the roots are literally dripping with moisture.
And Darwin and Hooker's experiment has also helped some Ascension natives, land crabs. For most of the year, they only live on these mountain slopes, where there's enough moisture to survive. Now, the growth of this alien rainforest provides them with plenty of water, as well as vegetation for food. But to breed, they must release their eggs into the sea, and to do that, they'll have to trek down to that distant bay, a journey of well over a week. And they'll have to cross parched lava fields, a death trap if a crab is caught out in the baking sun. They must make their journey under the cover of darkness.
So it's about 10 o'clock or so now at night. The crabs love the night because it's cooler, and especially after heavy rainfalls. And actually, there's one right there. There. Oh, it's a big one. This, come on you. This is a male. You can tell by he has a small tail. In the female, it's much bigger to carry all those eggs, and this is about as big as this species gets, so he's definitely a mature specimen going down to the beach to meet some lucky ladies. So let's follow him and see what they're up to.
The males can mate anywhere along the migration route, so few of them bother to make the long trek all the way down to the beach.
All of the crabs that have made it this far, they're all females. And you can see her mass of dark eggs supported by her tail here. They're incredibly enthusiastic and keen to get down to the ocean. So we better let them to it.
The crabs wait for waves to break over them, then shake themselves to release their eggs. If they can, they'll hang on to the rocks. These are land crabs and will drown if swept out to sea. There used to be huge numbers of crabs living here, but now the population is much lower. Today, some are killed on Ascension's roads. In the past, hundreds of thousands were killed as pests. But when the first explorers arrived, they had an even bigger effect on the island's wildlife. The ships that called here left behind cats and rats and mice. Originally, the island was teeming with bird life, like these sooty terns.
These vast bird populations are incredibly vulnerable and unadapted to cope with introduced predators. And these sooty terns really demonstrate the point. All of the birds here nest directly on the ground. And because their only defense is to peck, to squawk, or fly away, their chicks and eggs were just decimated by the cats, the rats, and the mice. And as a result, their numbers plummeted. Vast swathes of the island that were once home to millions of birds fell silent. These white splotches here on the rocks, this is the baked guano of bird populations that were wiped out up to a century ago.
But there's one place where I can get a glimpse of what Ascension used to look like. Bosun Bird Island, still glowing white with fresh guano. Cats, rats and mice never made it to Bosun Bird Island, so this remote outcrop became a refuge where the last of the seabirds survived. It's a really hard place to get to. Across a rough channel the locals call Shark Alley. And it's protected by steep cliffs covered in crumbling guano. No one has filmed on this island for 20 years. But the effort is more than worth it. Every square meter is packed with different seabirds. The cliffs are home to delicate-looking fairy terns. They're blown like scraps of paper on the breeze, but they're much tougher than they look. Tropic birds also ride the Atlantic winds. This is the bosun bird, which gave its name to the island. It's a tricky climb to the top, but this is what much of Ascension would once have looked like, packed with masked boobies. But there is one very special bird here, the Ascension Island frigate bird. This is the only place in the world where it lives.
This island is so incredibly important. When the Ascension frigate bird was wiped out on the mainland, this is the only place in the world where it survived. About 10,000 birds live here. Without this island, the entire species would become extinct.
Over the last few decades, huge efforts have been made to clear the main island of feral cats. And in 2006, it was finally declared cat-free. And it didn't take long for many of the birds to reclaim their former home on the mainland of Ascension. Noddy terns, tropic birds, masked boobies, and brown boobies. Everything except the threatened Ascension frigate. So again, the conservationists stepped in by making model frigate birds.
In 2011, these decoys were put here to try and attract the Ascension frigate bird back to the mainland from Bosun Bird Island.
Would the frigates be fooled? While I was on the island, something very special happened.
In late 2012, 2 pairs of Ascension frigate birds returned back to the mainland. Of those 2 pairs, one failed to raise a chick and the other succeeded. This little fella here in front of me, he's the very first Ascension frigate bird back on the Ascension mainland for over 180 years.
And since my visit, many more frigates have bred on the mainland. Their return, and that of the green turtles, is a real success story for conservation. As I prepare to leave Ascension, the next generation of turtles is also heading out to sea. It might be 50 years before these hatchlings mature, but when they do, they'll be able to find this tiny speck of land to come home to breed. My next destination is another speck of land, the island of St. Helena. I flew to Ascension in just over 8 hours, but St. Helena is 1,300 kilometers south of Ascension and can only be reached by ship. And not just any ship. This is one of the last working Royal Mail ships, the RMS St. Helena.
So we're about to get onto the launches, so it's goodbye Ascension and hello St. Helena.
Royal Mail ships were contracted to carry the Royal Mail, and the mail had to be delivered on time. So ships bearing the RMS designation were really efficient. Any ship displaying the crown insignia was seen as special.
Ever since I was a child, I dreamt about coming on this famous vessel. The RMS St. Helena has a really special place for these Atlantic territories. At the moment, it's the only way of getting cargo, people and livestock to St. Helena.
It's going to take 3 days to sail from Ascension to St. Helena. And to pass the time on these voyages, the RMS St. Helena has its own customs and traditions. One of them is deck cricket, a classic English scene in the middle of the Atlantic. Sadly, I was never good at sports.
I forgot to tell you, you're the captain, so for every run you lose by, you've got to buy us a drink.
No way! Right, put it there.
Hang on, don't declare now.
It took all 3 days to pay off my drink debt. But my first glimpse of St. Helena left me in no doubt it was worth it.
We've been steaming for 3 days, now we're finally approaching St. Helena. This is Jamestown Harbour, just down here in the foreground.
The people of St. Helena, known as Saints, are famous for their warmth and hospitality.
Very nice to meet you.
Welcome to St. Helena.
Thank you.
Robert, the taxi driver, offered to show me around.
Great. Thank you. Lovely.
St. Helena is the second oldest territory after Bermuda. Jamestown was founded in 1659 by the East India Company, and its long history can be seen around every corner. It was granted city status by Queen Victoria, a British city in the middle of the Atlantic. Like Ascension, St. Helena was a vital supply depot for sailing ships. And one of its most important products was rope, made from flax.
This is where the flax grows. Loads of flax on Holland. Down here, yeah, I'll show you where some is.
New Zealand flax was introduced to St. Helena in the first half of the 19th century. It has tough fibres, perfect for making rope.
In here is the fibre.
Right.
See the fibre there?
Oh, I see, yeah. So this
It's strong, very strong.
very strong. Very strong. You can see why it's
Yeah.
good for making ropes.
Rope making on St. Helena reached a peak in the 1930s, when more than 3,000 acres of flax were under cultivation. But the industry collapsed in 1965 with the arrival of synthetic fibres like nylon. All that's left are the abandoned flax mills, echoes of a once thriving industry. Yet flax is far more than just a historical footnote. The conditions on St. Helena were ideal for the plant, and it soon escaped from the plantations.
The flax plants now cover vast areas of the island. Many of the ridgetops, such as this one behind me, are completely covered with flax. And of course, the impact of that is that many of the native plants and animals have been completely displaced.
And flax is just one of many alien plants and animals that are changing this unique island.
The landscape across St. Helena might look green and lush and covered with vegetation, but really what we're looking at is a broken ecosystem. Pretty much all of the plants, the trees that you can see here have been introduced by man. The original plants and animals, the endemics, they're restricted to these hilltops, the last places on the island where they survived.
On these remote ridges, daisies grow into trees. Just one of dozens of unique plants and animals. Some are now lost forever, and some reduced to just one or two individuals. One example is the unfortunately named bastard gumwood tree.
This is one of the last two remaining bastard gumwood trees in the world. There's this tree here and another on the other side of the island, several kilometers away, and that's it for the species. The entire effort to save this tree from extinction rests on these two individuals.
The St. Helena National Trust is fighting to save the remaining species. Dr. Rebecca Cairns-Wicks took me out to the Millennium Forest, where native species are being replanted. Seeds had been collected from the last remaining plants and grown on in a specialist nursery on the island.
We have got species now that were reduced to one or two individuals, which are now in their thousands planted in either safe cultivated sites or semi-wild conditions, and they are doing much, much better and hopefully starting that process of regeneration for the future.
And as the native forests and grasslands are rebuilt, there's also hope for creatures that depend upon them. The spiky yellow woodlouse, still only a few hundred individuals left, or the wirebird, a kind of plover that's become the symbol of St. Helena's conservation programs. But there's still a long way to go. Generations of introduced grazers have stripped the native vegetation from some slopes, turning them as barren as Ascension's ash fields. One reason for St. Helena's unique wildlife is its remote location. Animals and plants evolved here, isolated from the rest of the world. And it was this extreme isolation that made St. Helena the perfect place for the island's most famous human resident, Napoleon Bonaparte. The house he stayed in, Longwood House, still stands, and I'm here to meet Joan Thomas, who looks after the place. Napoleon was exiled to Longwood House after his defeat at Waterloo in 1815. To be imprisoned on such a tiny island must have been the worst punishment for a man who hoped to conquer the world. And his health soon deteriorated. He died in 1821 after 6 years imprisoned on the island.
He actually died in this room.
Did he really?
And because he died in this room, there's nothing original, because the French got very sentimental, about the whole thing, and they took everything to France.
He was buried here, but in 1840, his body was also taken back to France. Even so, the French flag still flies at the centre of this remote British territory. St. Helena and Ascension played a key role in the days of the British Empire. But the last two overseas territories in my 3-year journey have played vital roles in much more recent military history. My next stop is on the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean. The famous red arrows come here to practice under clear Mediterranean skies. When Cyprus gained its independence in 1960, the newest of the UK overseas territories came into existence. Two areas on the island, Akrotiri and Dekelia, are still under British control as the sovereign base areas. Contained within the sovereign base areas are habitats that are rare in the Mediterranean, like lagoons and marshes that feed exotic-looking birds. The salt lake at Akrotiri draws greater flamingos, just one of 260 species of birds recorded on the Akrotiri Peninsula. Historical sites are also preserved within the sovereign base areas. Cliffsides honeycombed with ancient tombs, and the ruins of beautifully preserved temples. There's a wealth of history here. In just a few minutes, I can gather handfuls of broken pottery from Roman times onwards. The island has been strategically important since ancient times, and it still is. And that's also true of a tiny spit of land right at the other end of the Mediterranean. I've got just one more territory left to visit, one that's had an even more important role in recent history. Gibraltar. It's named after the iconic rock at its heart. Called the Mountain of Tariq by Moorish settlers in Spain, Jabal Tariq. Gibraltar is a tiny overseas territory, just 6 square kilometers. It was captured from Spain by a joint Dutch and British force in 1704 and formally ceded to Britain 9 years later. Now, it's home to 30,000 Gibraltarians with a proud and unique identity. Twice a year, the Royal Gibraltar Regiment reenact the locking of the city's defensive gates in the face of the Spanish. The ceremony of the keys. And Britain never gave up Gibraltar. They saw the rock as a major strategic location. Gibraltar played a key role as a supply depot in the days leading up to Nelson's victory at Trafalgar. And it proved its worth again during the Second World War. Gibraltar commands the narrow entrance to the Mediterranean. Without control of the rock, there might have been no North Africa campaign and no vital second front in Europe. So Churchill ordered the construction of a vast network of tunnels within the rock itself, making an impregnable fortress. He even built secret chambers, which would be manned by a special top-secret team if the rock fell to German forces. The tunnels and chambers were lined with cork to deaden sound, and the mission of the stay-behinds was to sneak through the tunnels to spy on the Germans. Secret tunnels and chambers, it seems more like a scene from a James Bond film. But if the rock had fallen, this would have been reality. Of all the territories I visited, the strategic importance of Gibraltar is the most obvious. The entrance to the Mediterranean is very narrow, and Africa is clearly visible from the rock. There are other African connections here. Barbary macaques, a type of monkey that normally lives in the mountains of North Africa. The monkeys may have been introduced from North Africa long before the British came here, but they've made the rock their home, the only wild population of monkeys in Europe. They're now as iconic as the rock itself. They used to be under the care of the British Army, with an officer in charge responsible for feeding and maintaining the most unruly troop in his regiment. Today, the local Natural History Society looks after them. There was good reason for the army to attach such importance to this colony of monkeys.
An age-old legend is that if the macaques ever left Gibraltar, the rock would fall and the British would leave. Winston Churchill believed in this legend so resolutely that during World War II, as the macaque population levels were falling, he ordered the military authorities to fly in macaques from Africa to bolster the local population and boost troop morale.
It doesn't look like these monkeys have any plans to leave their comfortable home just yet. It's taken me 3 years, but I finally made it to every one of the UK's overseas territories. And what I found are the jewels in the crown of the UK's natural heritage, from an icebound wilderness to tropical wonderlands. I've seen some of the most impressive wildlife spectacles on the planet. I've met some extraordinary people working to preserve this natural heritage, to safeguard the real treasure of these treasure islands, and who've shown me that with dedication we can rescue species from near extinction. Their wildlife heritage is an integral part of the overseas territories, and nowhere more than on the last place I visited, Gibraltar. As the legend tells us, if the monkeys leave, the rock will fall. But at the start of the 21st century, perhaps the legend should be reversed. It's the responsibility of the UK government to ensure that the macaques and all of this incredible wealth of wildlife survives long into the future.
Next tonight, approaching the turbulent present in the final part of our history of Jerusalem, the making of a holy city.